This is Cannaramic, and we're bringing you cannabis like you've never seen it before.
Today, we are so honored to have Jose Belen here with us. You are a retired combat veteran. You spent 14 months in Iraq fighting for our freedoms. You came back home, and you'll talk a little bit about how you experienced, what your experience was coming back home, and it caused you to create a new organization for veterans and support the mission to legalize cannabis in the United States. We're so happy for your service, and we're so happy to have you here to share your experience with us, Jose.
Hey, thank you so much. I appreciate the invitation. Really excited.
So let's talk about your background. You served 14 months in Iraq in combat, and you returned home in 2005 with an honorable discharge. When you came back home, you were different. You were a changed man. So talk to us about what you saw in Iraq, what that experience was like, and what was it that changed you?
Right. It's important to know I did 3 years of active duty service with 14 consecutive months throughout that 3 years. I'm not retired because I only had a 3-year enlistment. So once you complete, 3-year enlistment, you just completed your first term. And so I just want to make sure that, I'm not being classified incorrectly, right?
Okay, got it.
So when I enlisted in the Army, it was a decision that I made, really between myself and my creator. My family didn't know, what was happening. I grew up, on the street, was on probation for burglary at 12 and, was going down the wrong path. So for me, deciding to enlist in the United States Army was a personal decision that I needed to make to myself, that if I completed this time honorably, that I can do anything in life. And then on top of that, I always felt, even from a young age, thank you to my mother, a mission to serve, to take care, of others. And so I viewed joining the military as my opportunity to show not only the country, but the world what a volunteer soldier looks like and believes in. And then when September 11th happened, it happened a few months before I enlisted in 2002. That was another thing that really just hit me, home. I was born in Manhattan and raised in upstate New York, but regardless, of location, it still hurt as, a New Yorker. So once I enlisted, I purposely chose a combat arms job. I was given a field artillery option for 3 years because I had a knee surgery in high school that wouldn't allow me to have my own choice of career, which was infantry with an option to try out for special forces. So, I remember the recruiter trying to get me to be a truck driver or, work in clerical. And they specifically said, I'm not joining the Army to, push fences. I need combat or I'm out. And so that's what I asked for. And so at 19, I enlisted, got in there. I went to basic training in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, stationed in Germany. I got to Germany in June 2002. And then by May 2003, I was already pushing into Iraq as part of the first phase into there with orders to secure Baghdad. What that meant was basically we're going to be there for a while, because the orders specifically said we will be deployed, for 12 months or until mission complete. You better believe if they put until mission complete, you ain't leaving until the damn mission is complete. You know what I mean? So it was already understood, what I was facing, getting there. I was mentally prepared, locked in, very excited, because again, I always kind of say the warrior spirit is something that chooses you. Once it gives birth inside of you, you just have a certain way of thinking that, it's just special. And so once we got into Kuwait, prepping to go to Iraq, we had a good number, I believe maybe 2 weeks or so to acclimate and train. And we pushed into southern Iraq from Kuwait. We had to, basically convoy all the way up to Baghdad. And once we, crossed in from Kuwait into Iraq, I was the primary gunner for my section. And with that, I carried a multitude of weapons. I carried a M16 with a 203 grenade launcher. It's the weapon that Scarface used.
Yeah.
Then on top of that, a M249 saw machine gun, that each drum has 200 rounds. And I carried about 400 rounds of that on top of ammo, 6 high explosive grenades, across my chest. And then from there, I was on a 50 cal as well. And so I explain my mindset to give insight into how a combat vet views war, right? Each vet is different and views, it from a different aspect. But for me, knowing what I enlisted for and how much I meant every word of that enlistment, I got to go to work now. Prior to this, it was all training and, man, if one day, but now it's like, this is when your enlistment kicks in. And crossing over that berm, into Iraq, I immediately, locked and loaded my 50 cal, took it off safety, my M16 off safety, and my 249. Everything was locked and loaded, ready to go. And within minutes, I had a group of Iraqi children, running, towards our convoy. Now, if you study warfare, which is, if you want to tell the future, just look at history, that unfortunately in combat and conflict, the enemy uses children, right, as shields, or they've recruited these children as martyrs for the cause, and they become suicide bombers. So there is no age limit in combat to anything that poses a threat to you. Doesn't matter age, sex, whatever the case may be, military men and women hold the inherent right to use lethal force should we deem it, needed to protect ourselves or the interest of everyone around. And so knowing that, as soon as I seen the children running, I had to make the conscious decision at that time. If any one of these kids pose a threat, without a hesitation in the world or a flinch, not even a thought, my fingers pulling that trigger before any of that hits. And they're going down whichever is the target if there's a threat. And so within minutes of coming into combat, it's like becoming a werewolf when the full moon hits, right? Prior to that, it's just normal human being, whatever. But then once that full moon hits, just completely change. And that's really what happens. You understand that death is imminent at any moment without warning, and it's okay to look to the sky and to have that conversation. With me, is my God and Savior Jesus Christ, but anyone independent can believe in anything. But for me, it was the most liberating feeling to know that it was okay if I died there, because that's what I promised, right? And I didn't promise it to me, I promised it to the people of Iraq as well. Anyone that would be, hurt or tortured, whatever the case may be, that's what we're there for. And so once I had that initial experience, hitting up the convoy, we were attacked constantly with, RPGs, and, we got, once we got to Baghdad, a few of our guys got hit immediately. One of my friends, a sergeant, took, RPG'd his vehicle and, basically took shrapnel, to his face, and that was within minutes of getting to Baghdad. We took one of Saddam's palaces as our battalion headquarters. And my firing battery, because there's different ones in artillery, there's different batteries, we actually took over a police station. But prior to taking that police station, we actually had to sleep outside at a Fedayeen terrorist training ground, right on the Tigris River. And I remember once, we finally got there, we couldn't really take our gear off because the snipers we knew, could come from anywhere. And so the acclimation in the combat was instant. Like I said, was okay with giving my life. So I had a unparalleled mental freedom there. I had the ability to do anything there for the sake of the cause, and it was okay. And the only thing I asked in return to God was, don't let me suffer. If you want to take me, we're good. Just please don't, let me suffer.
Now you're with your family, you're trying to kind of live in the US and in this new environment that you've been away from for almost 2 years. And here you, well 5 years, because you straight from the combat. And you're isolating yourself, you're having trouble sleeping. What are your family, what are they saying about the way you're behaving?
They just kind of try to start the conversation. Hey, you're sleeping a lot. Or after, I slam the door, yell or whatever the case may be, my mom would, sit down with me and out of genuine concern, voice what she felt as a mother, was wrong with her son.
Mm-hmm.
And then when my father, my childhood best friend, started to it was like an intervention,
right,
in a way, say, and then there was a family friend, Brian Rollins, who's a combat veteran himself. He was really the one that said, Jose, it's okay to go to the VA. You should really get checked out.
So you didn't think you had anything really wrong with you?
Yeah, I was like, because again, there's that warrior mindset. I signed up for it. I don't want no one to feel sorry for me. This is my choice.
Right.
I got to figure it out, just like we did downrange. There's no bitching, complaining.
Right. Yeah, you're suffering, but you're strong and you're a fighter, and that's what you do. So eventually you went to the VA and you got a diagnosis. What was that? PTSD.
Yeah, I remember they told me shell shock first, and I was just like, that term I knew, and then they said PTSD, and I was like, the hell is that?
And you learned that this was post-traumatic stress syndrome. Is that what the proper term is?
Post-traumatic stress, they call it a disorder. I hate that. But yeah, that's what they tell you. They say, oh, you're, depressed at the 10th degree or whatever. You have every box on the checklist checked off.
Mm.
And they're like, yeah, you're fucked up. So you need this to help you sleep, Ambien. You need this to stabilize your mood, Zoloft or Prozac. And if that doesn't work, we'll switch them out and find you the best medications to treat you.
Right.
Okay. Fuck.
You got Ambien, you got Zoloft. What else? Was that the first ones?
Yeah, those are the first ones. I remember the Ambien because it made me sleepwalk, which completely just bugged me out. And that's the thing. They don't do a really good job. And I shouldn't say they. My experience with my doctors back then, they didn't do a very good job of explaining side effects.
Right.
So when I called, they're like, oh yeah, that's a just general side effect of medication. And I'm like, well, this ain't working.
Right.
And then that's where you kind of, I don't want to call it a trap, but you fall back into the trap. You go back, they ask more questions, and then they say, okay, let's wean you off these and start you on these. And again, I'm new to the system, and okay, go on another batch.
And what were those?
Huh?
What were those?
I don't really remember those. Like tramadol, they put me on tramadol, trazodone, venlafaxine, or triptyline. What else? Lamictal. There's a a good number of them through 14 years. I mean, I actually have the document, so I can find out the full list. But the trap is, I call it the trap because you're already suicidal, in some cases. You're already depressed. Like, you're not going there if you're feeling amazing. Well, maybe you are. But still, once these side effects kick in, they become fatal in a lot of cases. And that's what nearly happened to me, driven to suicide.
So you became in this protected class called the disabled veteran. Once you took that diagnosis, you started to take these different medications over 14 years. You had side effects, suicidal thoughts, anger, sleepwalking, and this was your life. How did you manage to work? You were working at Walmart at one point, and then you were able to pivot. I want you to talk a little bit about your time at Walmart and then what you did to change your life?
Yeah, so when I got home, the transition period, is somewhat of a difficult one because you're matched in the civilian world with what you did in the military for transition purposes. So for me, as an artillery guy, the only real job I had was to go out west and blow up roadways, right? And for me, it's like, well, damn, I have other aspirational goals for myself. My family came from Puerto Rico to give me the best life, and I want to do what I can to give them the best life and raise our generations here. And so that didn't sit well with me, but it fell in line. Also, the VA explained that I'd be socially impaired, professionally, personally, due to these diagnoses. I may, have trigger issues and hyper awareness, all that. But again, that didn't sit well with me. That's just not me. I went into the military and the Army to be all I could be, in the Army, but I need to still be all that I can be out when I'm out. And so a good friend of mine recommended me for a job at Walmart distribution center in upstate New York for a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday shift as an order filler. And through Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I would work 38 hours. It's like 5 in the morning and sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9 at night, whatever. And it's just constant order filling, picking, whatever you have to do in their distribution center. And then beyond that, I said, let me try to use the GI Bill. And I did well up until the trigger started happening. Then I started to notice a scatterbrain, and college really wasn't working out, but I always wanted to get into white collar work, real estate, corporate, because as a kid, from the street, looking at how do you get to the top, right? And then back then in New York, it's real estate, these things and that. So I seen an advertisement for night school for real estate, and I went to real estate school at night, and I did my work during the weekends, and then I was licensed as a realtor. I got my real estate license. I ended up working for Coldwell Banker Prime Properties in Scotia, New York. So Monday through Thursday, I would do real estate full time. And then Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, I would do the Walmart distribution center.
And at this point, you didn't have a family. You were just still on your own. And eventually, you wound up getting that white collar dream. You got the dream job. You got the dream wife. You had a car. You had a nice home. Right. But it still wasn't right.
Correct.
Because you were still facing these issues with your diagnosis and the medications you were taking. What was it like for your wife? I mean, did she know about, how was she dealing with, because I know that when people have PTSD, it doesn't just affect them, it affects their immediate family. So how was it living with you?
Right. The interesting thing about my wife is she met me when I was at the height of my corporate career in direct property and casualty. When I was a top guy, I was making $15,000, $20,000 a month, and from the external, right, it appeared that, I was this, what I was, a consummate professional, and I really paid attention to detail and took pride in my work. But then once I left work, she didn't know about the suicidal ideations, the battle with PTSD. And once we started dating, it became kind of a moral conflict. How do I tell her without scaring her away? And for a few months or so, I never talked about it. She had really no idea, until it became evident, and I just started talking about it more. And so we moved in together, and that's where she, really experienced, what it's like living with a combat vet, someone who wakes up, in the middle of the night crying, angry, in the morning, they're just randomly pissed off. You can have the most amazing day, you put $1 million in front of that person and they don't give a stuff. They give, crap. All we're thinking about is, fuck this place. I hate the dreams, hate the nightmares, hate everybody, hate myself. So for her, it hit her really hard because, she had no real idea.
And she was in at this point. You were married, she was in love, there was no turning back. So here you guys are, and you are looking for a change. You need something different. How did you come to cannabis?
I came to cannabis, I mean, at 12 years old, I smoked cannabis on my first day of 6th grade. So I knew from that age, I grew up in a household with, you know, a lot of domestic issues and, you know, psychological things. And I understood even at that young age that cannabis actually helps my mood and stuff. So when I would be out on the street, you know, I actually started consuming cannabis even while on probation up until I enlisted. You know, when I came out, then I had the conflict, you know, get on the medications, they don't, you know, help, stay off, that's at that end, or go to the black market, run risk of getting caught, arrested, ruining my corporate career. You know, so what ended up happening once I came home was I was just kind of playing ping pong with those, you know, 3 different situations. Sometimes I'd go, you know, black market, you know, and just start smoking bud, you know, for a few weeks. But then finally would cower because paranoid that they're going to drug test me. I'll lose that, you know, and then have that. Oh, I need to use my pills. And so I really reintroduced cannabis. My wife and I got together in 2011. I reintroduced cannabis at a heavy level in about 2015, 16. Once I started really accepting that I was going, you know, through clear issues and nearly ending my life. So I just started smoking, you know, every day. I worked from home. I worked for a special, you know, division, you know, for farmers. And my regimen was my wife would leave for work, you know, at whatever moment I would, you know, roll a spliff or you know, take a, you know, hit, you know, off the bowl, and it would just calibrate my mind to be calm and collected, because self-isolation for veterans is very fatal, and working from home, for being alone. So cannabis, you know, everyday use allowed me in a sense to stay alive. And so I got to the point where I was like, fuck it. You know, if they question it or something happens, then it is what it is.
You said,
So,
I'm not hiding anymore. You know, this is what's really helping me. You were able to sleep, right? Were you able to manage the nightmares and things like that and the other symptoms?
a bit better. Yeah, cannabis is a tool. It doesn't solve PTSD per se. But yeah, absolutely. It actually allowed me to perform, and still to this day perform at a level that I've never performed before, even professionally. So we're able to track, as my cannabis use has increased, my productivity has also increased, which is why I believe it's duplicatable across all boundaries for vets. You know, if one can do it, if they can't, let me empower them to show them the way to do it.
Now, you have a medical marijuana license in Florida. Florida does allow medical marijuana.
Mm-hmm.
So at the VA hospitals near you, are they prescribing medical marijuana for veterans?
Absolutely not. And that's one of my biggest gripes with the government right now. I mean, that's a very sore subject, because it's just BS, to put it lightly. I do conversate with my doctor. You know, I recently moved for Orlando, so I had to get a new doctor, you know, when I relocated. And sure enough, once the urinalysis came back and it tested, you know, positive for marijuana, naturally she went into, why are you, you know, consuming marijuana and blah, blah, blah. And I let her get that out, and I paused her, because she had just also completed asking me a series of questions, if I'm depressed, if I'm sleeping well, you know, and I was able to say, no, I'm not as depressed, you know. And so once she finished her spiel, I said, you know, those questions that I just answered saying that I'm not worse and I'm sleeping better, it's because of the marijuana I just tested positive for. And I pulled out my patient card and I said, I am a proud medical marijuana patient, and you can't say anything about it. Wow. You know, and you need to work with me. And ironically enough, and it wasn't a hostile exchange. It was just a very punctual and expressive. So at least at a minimum, my doctor and I have open dialogue. I have taught her on what the endocannabinoid system is.
Okay.
And what that gave birth to me in my mind is, wait a minute, it just takes one conversation. So if we can have the conversation with one doctor, let's educate all of them. Let's educate the whole VA and stop mailing, auto ship poison and start auto shipping medicine like the Canadians. And they send, I believe, 3.5 grams or have 3.5 grams available for veterans, up there at no cost.
Wow. So you're on a mission now, a mission zero, as your organization's called, to educate veterans and also in the process, their caregivers, the doctors, about the benefits of medical marijuana. But at the same time, medical marijuana is not available in all states. So talk about that. What does it look like for veterans across the country?
It's very difficult. I mean, you have not only veterans, but you have oppression, happening right now. And the oppression is it's at a fatal level. It's at a very, very just hurtful point, right? Because we're talking about denying access between natural medicine and choosing openly to work with big pharma complicitly. They've been demasked as they're getting prosecuted openly. So it's just a heartbreak. You have veterans right now, actually beautiful. Here, let me tell you a real life situation. I got a call from my best friend's wife last week. Her brother just left the military, left the army, served in Afghanistan, survived a few IEDs, but has a traumatic brain injury, on top of PTSD and other ailments. So, she calls me and she said, Jose, I am terrified for my brother. He's in Alabama. And she's like, he called me and told me he has nothing else to try to do to help him. He's gone on every medication in the few months that he's been home and told the VA, none of these work. Please, let's figure something else out. When he attempted to have the conversation on cannabis, he was ridiculed by his doctor, and she explained to him why he should stay fucking as far away from cannabis as possible. So, that's why I'm here. So I called, her brother, and that connection was immediately just, forged. Hey, I understand you right now. What can I do to help? Let's, stay engaged. And it was heartbreaking, because he lives in a state where it's not accessible. So, he's like, Jose, what do I do? How do I get marijuana? And I can't tell him to go to the black market, right? That's not right, because it's a catch-22. What if he gets arrested? What if he gets robbed? And it just fucking sucked.
Right.
To tell him relocate here at a minimum and get your medical marijuana card. And so that's what veterans are forcing, a moral issue. Are we criminals? We're sacrificing our integrity because we're breaking the law. That's what we're really doing. And clearly we're not afraid to say it anymore because we want to live. Mission Zero, we're not only an organization dedicated, to ending veteran suicide. We're not only in this to save lives, but we need to give people reasons to live.
Right.
And that's what the government is again denying by keeping cannabis scheduled at this moment.
And you've got a lawsuit that you're a part of, a federal lawsuit,
Yeah.
Where you're suing the Attorney General to take cannabis off the Schedule 1 status. And for those who don't understand what Schedule 1 is, it means it's on the same category as drugs like heroin and ecstasy. They're saying cannabis has no medicinal value and it's highly addictive, and therefore it should be categorized as Schedule 1. You're in a lawsuit right now to deschedule cannabis.
Absolutely, yes. Myself, my co-plaintiffs, Alexis Bortel, Jagger Cope, Marvin Washington, and Canna Culture Association. We launched a lawsuit via Hiller PC in July 2017. We're suing the Attorney General. At the time was Jeff Sessions. Now it's William P. Barr, I believe. And then we're suing the DEA and their acting director, Robert Patterson. and the Department of Justice in the United States as a whole to deschedule and legalize cannabis.
And what's the at this point it's going through the process, and this has been done before, right? The U.S. government has been sued before. What are you guys looking to do? What's the outlook on this particular issue? Is there a chance that this time it'll pass, that you're gonna be successful?
Yeah. The consensus amongst my team and even just personally is this is the one. And it started February 2018 at the highest court in the land in Manhattan. Just federal court, myself, my fellow plaintiffs there, and then the Department of Justice walks right in front of you, and it's on. And you have a federal judge slamming the Department of Justice with questions because the DOJ just kept trying to pivot to the DEA process and dismiss it out of court and send it to the DEA process, which you do that, the DEA has 9 years to respond, and you better believe they take the full 9 years and they say no. And so the judges really challenged the Department of Justice. It wasn't Jeff Sessions himself that came. It was one of, the attorneys representing the DOJ. And, what was momentous on that day was when the judge posed a question to the Department of Justice and said, there are 3 plaintiffs in this lawsuit, Jose Belen, Alexis Bortel, Marvin Washington, and I believe Jagger Cott as well, that are in this lawsuit right now that are utilizing cannabis to stay alive. We know this. They're here. How can you deny? How can you say that cannabis is not, healing and life-saving? You could hear a pin drop.
Wow.
And the government just nodded.
They weren't ready. They expected to be able to just pass it off back to the DEA and they wouldn't have to respond. So you've gotten past that hurdle, right? So that was a big piece. And now you are where?
Well, we're at the appeal stage in the Second Circuit. Our judge referred it to the Second Circuit. We had our second court date in December. Again, the unique thing about our case is, should this go to a trial, you have the depositions, right? So in my case, should this go that route, I would be for 5 days under deposition by the Department of Justice and the DEA for 8 hours plus every day for them just asking whatever the hell they want. But at the flip side, they also have to sit under deposition too, which is unprecedented. It would allow us the opportunity to cross-examine them. And so from there, if we get past this stage, if the judges rule to continue the case, they'll send it back to the higher court from February of last year, and that judge will determine if this would go to trial or not. Should this go to trial, I feel, again, personally, and some of my attorneys, that the government would potentially settle, as opposed to going through an open trial, closed trial, whatever, in front of the nation, the world, in a sense. So we're just, literally today, I text my attorney. I said, do we have any updates on the case? Because the Attorney General, I was watching him get grilled on, Capitol Hill for the Mueller report, and I did a Facebook Live explaining to people, Jeff Sessions left, but this is the guy we're suing now. Understand the gravity of the fight that we're in.
Right.
We're suing the man that released the Mueller report, and that's tied into that, and that's how important this lawsuit is.
So this is a big deal, and if you're successful, then cannabis will be descheduled, and it will then potentially be available for veterans all across the nation to be able to medicate themselves and be able to live life the way that you've been able to live life with the help of cannabis. Well, we wish you all the best. Listen, you guys serve so valiantly for us, and you deserve nothing less than the best care when you come home. And it's a shame that so many veterans are suffering, but Mission Zero, you guys are on the ground working with veterans. You're doing so many great programs. I know you're doing some things with sports teams and free events and really just bringing the family together. So we encourage you to keep going. We're here with you. If you need more witnesses, there'll be plenty who can share their testimony. And we thank you so much for all you are doing with this, taking this to the higher level and doing all these things on the ground at the same time. Jose Belen, I know that you have shown us cannabis in a way that we have never seen it before. Thank you for all you do.
No, thank you for allowing me to, speak on behalf of the voiceless. And it's all about them, and we're doing it together. So.